Who do you think you are? Well, this might seem like a very simple question. I'd answer, I'm Jeremy. But who are you really? I'm Jeremy. I'm a father, a son, a Qigong teacher, a therapist, a nerd, a lover, not a fighter, a woodworker, good with my hands, a music lover and an ex-DJ. I'm crazy about cats and dogs. I love walking and nature. But that's just a list of ideas. Who am I really? Well, I'm with the philosopher Daniel C. Dent on this one. His analogy is that of a newsroom. Hundreds of reporters all working on their own stories. Some are collaborating on bigger, more important pieces. We won't know what the most important current story is until it hits the front page and gets published. It doesn't mean that the other stories won't emerge, just that this is the current version of you today. I bump into a student on the high street. I dip into the file marked teacher and set up that profile ready to use. I bump into an attractive young lady in a coffee shop. I open the file marked charming. And depending on the current circumstances, possibly the file marked single too. Later, I have an appointment with a client. Now it's time to assume the role of therapist. I go on a course and I learn how to bake bread. There's another one for the new folder. There's a neat cross-reference system, like a website's word cloud. I can pull out the folder marked baking when I'm chatting to this lady in the coffee shop, or with my family at dinner, or on a retreat over a bread roll to break the ice in starting a conversation. Many of these files can be cross-referenced and used in multiple situations. Some of these files hold less happy information. Imagine painting a very high ceiling in a very big ballroom. Let's think of a tower scaffold with a platform on top. Each of these towers represents the key ideas that make up Jeremy. Some are good, some are bad. Some are very tall, very central. Others are smaller and perhaps at the side of this vast room. Take a look at my central scaffold tower. Painted on each strut of the scaffold are words. If you look very carefully, you can make some of them out. Insecure, not good with money, a bit unreliable, inconsistent. Each of these words supports this scaffold. Eventually, this tower of words comes to a platform. On top of the platform is a small boy with bright red hair. On his t-shirt it reads, "I was adopted." He looks sad and bewildered. Maybe you have different platforms. What words are written on the scaffolding? How many scaffolds do you have? Too many to count? Just a few, but they're really big? Back in the newsroom, there are stories that are being dug out of the past. This filing system is kept by a character who looks and sounds like Gollum from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Some of the stories have been filed away so deeply and carefully he hardly knows how to find them. From time to time he picks up a random folder and takes it to the newsroom. Some deep, dark secret you hoped would never come out. Lies have very short legs, they say. This character from your subconscious can always find some way to express the story that'll hurt you most deeply. When we start to really examine some of these towering edifices, we see that some of them are not even real. Look at the character on top. Perhaps it has something to do with money. Perhaps you've actually been doing quite successfully in your life. but at some deep level you feel that you don't deserve it. Why is this? Let's investigate this tower. Perhaps it was constructed for you by this Gollum character. Perhaps he's woven a story for you that isn't even based in fact. Well, it looks very real amongst all the other towers, but as you look harder, you start to see that each strut that holds the tower up is actually formed from another person's opinion. Here's your grandfather telling you that money is hard to come by. Here's your father who made money but lost it all in a stroke of bad luck. Here's your mother who tells you never to take financial risks. Here's the government telling you the economy is terrible and that rates will have to change. You look at the reality, which is a good job, being paid well, some savings, you own part of a house, you have a pension brewing nicely. Isn't it time that you knock this tower down? Back in our internal newsroom, well, we know what journalists are like. They like a good drink. It's much easier for you to go out on a big night out with your mates, have a few bottles of wine, and avoid thinking about all this stuff. Maybe these journalists like to go out on the pull. They like to go out chatting up people to avoid thinking about the reality of what needs doing. Some of these lazy journos prefer getting a pizza and sitting and watching Netflix all night. Perhaps they like to hide behind a giant tub of Ben and Jerry's. Here's Gollum. What's he found to upset you with this time? Let's say you're walking through a shopping mall on your way home from work. You step onto the escalator and you look at the people below you as you travel down. You see the familiar colour and cut of your ex-partner's hair. The jeans are exactly the same. It's definitely the same rain jacket. Your mind is instantly back at the last time you talked. They were very upset with you, told you some very strong home truths about yourself. It was a very nasty and embarrassing encounter. They shouted at you a lot. It was scary and intimidating. You didn't part on good terms at all, and now you're about to bump into them in the crowded shopping centre. And they're holding hands with a new partner. Oh my God, this is going to be horrible. Barely 1 second has passed since you stepped onto the escalator. Gollum has pulled up all the files on your ex and has already pulled up some of your useful and somewhat less useful files to be used to defend yourself. Electromagnetic signals fire all over the brain like 100 alarm clocks going off. These signals ignite thousands of chemical messengers all over the body. Stress hormones flood through you. You're instinctively looking for the exits. Can I run back up the crowded escalator? Your face is bright red. Your heartbeat is massively elevated. Your fists are clenched, as is your jaw. She steps off the bottom step, looks back. It's not even her. You have to sit for 20 minutes and have a large glass of wine, maybe even 2, before you can even start to recover. You see the power of these stories, true or not even true. Sometimes we allow these stories to run every day. We look in the mirror, we contemplate our day at work, and already the horror stories are flowing and the body is starting to fill with toxic chemicals. Day after day, week after week, follows year after year. This is one of the key roots of chronic illness. When we're young, many of these towers are built for us. Do you see how words are the structure of our consciousness? If I hold up an object and a material you've never seen, and with a shape that suggests nothing to you, what can you do with that? You have no words, no vocabulary. It's quite literally nothing. Unnatural curiosity leads us to ask questions. What is it for? What is it made of? What is it called? By using language, we build a concept. This is what we've always done. This is how our consciousness works. Taoism doesn't care about naming things, owning things, about acquiring knowledge. We put such a high price on knowledge. It requires time and money to acquire knowledge. Therefore, it makes us special, makes us stand out from the crowd. Ah, yes, the professor, he's amazing. From a Taoist perspective, that's a waste of time. Flow with nature, be like water, empty your mind. My mind is full. I'm trying to empty it, in part by putting it in books. My second book is on its way. When it's done, there'll be another section of empty shelves in the storage area, another load of stories that I'll no longer need to refer to. Some of these towers are very real, we think. They may have really serious words holding up each platform. Maybe you were abused as a child. Each strut of the tower has hurt, abused, damaged, depressive, or problematic written on them. This tower stands in the middle of the room, huge and central. Everything in your life is an expression of this story. But is it really important? Look, I don't wish to minimize anybody's terrible story here, just to try and find new perspective. The first thing to ask is this abuse still happening to me right now? You always need to make yourself safe as step one. Take a bag, take a credit card, take some cash from the bank, take the car, get as far away as you can, tell the police, social support, make yourself safe, hide with your friends. If you are safe, then to the question, is it happening right now? The answer is no. But it stays at the back of my mind always. Just remember this. Every moment spent dwelling on your past is a moment that is being stolen from your present. A bad thing happened, and now every day since, you've given it time from your life. This is even worse when you can finally identify the fact that these stories aren't even real stories. What do we do? Well, 1, make ourselves safe. Do what you have to do. 2, give ourselves space to contemplate. Contemplation is different to meditation. This is sitting quietly, turning off your mind and turning it to examine these structures. The more you shine your light of consciousness on these towers, the more you begin to see they might just be epic illusions. Do this by just looking at the process and asking yourself, does this structure still serve me? My colleague John once walked into class and said to me, I just saw a structure that I developed when I was 12 to protect myself at boarding school. 30 years later, I'm still using it. Today, that stops. In China on retreat, I stared at the massive structure of my adoption. The words are capitalized because it was so important in my life. They coloured everything. The tower was so big, it threw shade on everything around it. For weeks in China, I considered it from every angle. What strut could I kick out to bring this massive tower down? I gave up fighting. This was the biggest battle of my life to date. I couldn't go on any longer. I'd had enough. There was no solution. Maybe the teachers were all wrong, and some things you just have to live with. I awoke the next day, and the tower had collapsed. I was diligent. I examined it from every angle. I was convinced that it had to go, and as soon as I stopped holding on too tightly, it was gone. Be diligent. Do the work. Ask the guys in the newsroom what stories they're working on. Search the record room and don't take anything Gollum tells you as the truth. Burn all of his files. Go to the ballroom. Start kicking and hacking away at the struts of the biggest tower. What's left when you destroy all of this? If we're just a series of competing stories, if our self, as described by our consciousness, is just a series of words and their resulting concepts, what'll be left? The process is slow, but it can be amazing. The process can be painful. You're so deeply identified with some of these stories that ripping the bandage can be exceptionally painful. But it's always better to let the wound air. There are so many stories that it'll take a while to clear them all out, so you'll not be gone in a flash. Some people assume it'll be like a form of Alzheimer's. It's so sad. He used to be a vibrant version of Jeremy. Now he's just an empty husk. Each load you take off your shoulders opens up a new happiness. Day by day, you edge towards a calmer, happier version of yourself. Each day, less and less can hurt you. As you dissolve the stupid fake patterns around you, no more stress, much more love. Your society stories about how horrible other people are fall away, and you see that everybody is amazing. Look, don't get me wrong, you can still see the massive flaws in people. You don't suddenly become stupid and gullible. You just start to see that everybody is doing the best they can with the tools they currently have. Your anger dies down. You feel less inclined to judge everybody, and that includes you. The critical dialogue in your head quietens. The need to be right drifts. Everything just starts to become love. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm in the foothills of this process. I'm still happy to growl at somebody walking down the pavement towards me with their head buried in their phone. You can still expect me to occasionally bark at another driver. All I can ask is that you give it a go yourself. Take a few days off. Sit silently with yourself. List the towers. What are the words that construct them? What are the figures that stand atop these towers? Think about the stories that the reporters are working on. If you can start to map out the formative aspects of your life that no longer serve you, then you can start to make radical and everlasting change in your life. As Dr. Pang says, change your mind, change your destiny. Hun Yuan Ling Tong. We say this in Zheneng Qigong. It's a kind of watchword. It has many depths and ideas and meanings, but one translation might go something like this. The fundamental chi of the universe is always flowing through your life and is always abundantly supporting you. Hun Yuan Ling Tong. What more might you need? Love, love, love to you from me.